Hello, my name is Abid Ahmed. I am in section SD2 and I will be covering masonry mortar. I will be going over the components of masonry mortar, the function of masonry mortar, the masonry mortar's importance in relation to lime, also how the compressive strength and the flexural strength of masonry mortar is tested, and also the importance of water-tightness in masonry mortar. So the function of masonry mortar. Masonry mortar essentially provides full bearing in between the masonry units against one another. This provides a sort of cushion between the bricks so that there's more durability within the masonry wall. It also provides a watertight and airtight finish because the masonry will get in between the little cracks and crevices in between the bricks that if it weren't there, water and air would be able to seep straight through, right? The components of masonry mortar. Masonry mortar is essentially made of three things. There's a binder, a filler, and water. The binder is made up of Portland cement and lime. The filler is sand. This is just an aggregate, and the water is used to cure the Portland cement and the lime. So the lime is very important in the Portland cement because it provides workability in the wet state of the mortar. So without the lime, only Portland cement is very coarse and it isn't workable, right? Even though more Portland cement will increase the compressive strength of the mortar, which I'll get to later. So the workability of mortar, instead of just regular concrete, is a little bit different. It isn't a straight thing that you can measure. It relies on basically three components: cohesion, extrusion, and water retentivity. So the cohesion is basically the property that allows mortar to cling to vertical surfaces. So if you ever look in a masonry wall, you have the horizontal mortar laying on top of the brick, and you also have vertical lines of mortar laying adjacent to the bricks, right? So the cohesion, what that does is it allows it to cling to the vertical surfaces next to the bricks. This is why cohesion in mortar is very important and it's related to workability. The extrusion is the ability for the mortar to be extruded out of the brick. So like when the bricks are being laid, right? The excess mortar will easily extrude outward and can be easily troweled off. And also water retentivity is extremely important. Water retentivity, what this does is it avoids water being bled out of the mortar, right? Obviously, water is one of the components of mortar. So water retentivity essentially avoids water being bled out of this mortar. And the more water retentive, the more workable the mortar is, because obviously it's more of a hydraulic property. Too workable though, and the mortar loses its compressive strength, which is relatively important. So essentially, the way that you want the workability to the mortar to be is you want the mortar to be as workable as possible. So basically, it has the lowest compressive strength it needs. Lime is very important when it comes to the water tightness of the masonry mortar because it provides ductility to the masonry wall because the mortar is more elastic. It makes the structure more resilient against lateral loads due to this. It's able to basically bend without breaking. Also, it gives the wall a property called autogenous healing. So basically what happens is any small cracks that result from the stresses that the wall might face, they're automatically filled up by the mortar. Mortar strength is an entirely separate topic. It actually has very little to do with lime. Essentially, there are two components when you're talking about mortar strength. You have the compressive strength of the masonry mortar, and you also have the flexural tensile bond strength of the masonry mortar. So the compressive strength, this essentially is related to the amounts of Portland cement and lime the more Portland cement and lime you have, the more compressive strength you'll have. Also, it should be noted that in proportion, like between the Portland cement and the lime, if there's more Portland cement than lime in proportion, then there's a greater amount of compressive strength. This is because when you're looking at Portland cement is obviously the main component when making concrete, and concrete is very well known for its high compressive strength. The other component to mortar strength is flexural tensile bond strength, which is affected by both the mortar and the masonry wall itself. This is because this is the measure of the bond between the masonry and the mortar, right? This is affected by a lot of different things, actually. You have the types of the unit, the surface roughness of the unit, the workmanship, the curing conditions. All of these go into the bond strength. All of these go into how the mortar bonds with the wall, right? Another thing that people don't take into account is the water level in the mortar. This is because the higher workability, if you have, let's say, more water or a more water retentive mortar, right? Higher workability makes the mortar wedge into tinier crevices of the mortar, increasing the bond strength, right? Also, higher Portland cement with respect to lime also increases bond strength because Portland cement is, in general, stronger than lime. Another way to deal with the bond strength of the wall is by using steel reinforcement. So it's not necessary that the mortar itself has to deal with the bond strength. You can also shift the loads of the bond strength over to rebar, right? Which would be honestly a lot better because steel has a much stronger tensile strength than concrete. In talking about the compressive strength and the bond strength of mortar, it seems that we were talking about lime sort of disparagingly, right? The more Portland cement inside the mortar, the more bond strength, the more compressive strength overall, right? This is not to say that lime is useless in terms of strength, however. Since lime increases water tightness, it also increases strength in a way. This is because when water penetrates the masonry mortar, it can corrode the steel reinforcements, embedments, also ties, all those little components that strengthen the masonry mortar. So it's really important that the masonry mortar is extremely watertight. So in a way, in dealing with the bond strength, you can have more lime and you can account for the decrease in bond strength by just using steel reinforcements that are well protected because of the lime that makes the wall so watertight. In conclusion, masonry mortar is the cushion in between each of the individual masonry units that's incredibly important to provide water tightness and air tightness to the wall, while also providing a relative amount of ductility to the wall as well. It is affected by Portland cement, water, and lime primarily. The lime provides a certain level of workability and water tightness to the wall, which is incredibly important in protecting the inner accessories of the wall and also providing ductility against lateral loads. The Portland cement is incredibly important in dealing with the flexural strength and the bond strength of the wall, and the water is also very important in providing workability to the mortar.